Marcus Rodriguez sat in the sterile waiting room of Pinnacle Financial Tower, his palms sweating against the worn fabric of his only suit. The jacket sleeves were slightly too short, revealing frayed cuffs that he'd tried to hide by pulling his shirt down. His scuffed shoes had been polished 3 times that morning until they gleamed despite their age. The tie around his neck felt like a noose, borrowed from his neighbor who worked at the hardware store down the street. He checked his phone for the 100th time, 10 minutes early. Perfect. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What Marcus didn't know was that he was sitting on the wrong floor. The janitorial position he'd applied for at Morrison Cleaning Services was supposed to be conducted in the basement office. Instead, his nervous energy and determination to make the best impression had led him to the 42nd floor, where the executive offices of Pinnacle Industries conducted their highest-level interviews. The receptionist, assuming he was another candidate for the chief financial officer position, had simply smiled and asked him to wait. Marcus stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the sprawling city below, trying to calm his racing heart. Chicago stretched endlessly in every direction, a maze of concrete and dreams where he'd been searching for steady work for the past 8 months. The unemployment checks had run out 3 weeks ago, and the stack of overdue bills on his kitchen table seemed to grow taller every day. His daughter Sophia's school supplies list for the new semester sat folded in his wallet, each item a small mountain he wasn't sure how to climb. The morning had started like any other in their cramped 1-bedroom apartment on the south side. Sophia, 11 years old and wise beyond her years, had made herself a bowl of cereal while Marcus sat at their makeshift table, circling job listings in the newspaper with a dying pen. The apartment walls were thin enough that they could hear Mrs. Chen next door practicing her violin, the melancholy notes drifting through like a soundtrack to their struggles. Sophia had looked up from her cereal, milk dripping from her spoon. "Dad, you don't have to worry so much. I can ask Mr. Peterson if I can help stock shelves at the grocery store after school." Marcus had felt his chest tighten. His little girl shouldn't be thinking about work. She should be thinking about friends and homework and whatever 11-year-olds thought about when the weight of the world wasn't pressing down on their shoulders. "Mija, that's not your job, that's mine." She'd shrugged with the casual acceptance that broke his heart daily. "I know, but we're a team, right?" They were. A team had been since her mother Carmen died in the car accident 4 years ago. The drunk driver had walked away without a scratch, while Carmen lay unconscious in the hospital for 3 weeks before the machines were finally turned off. Marcus remembered sitting beside her bed, holding her hand and making promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Promises about taking care of Sophia, about being enough for both of them, about never letting their daughter feel alone in the world. The life insurance money had lasted 2 years. Marcus had been working steady construction then, building high-rise condos for people who made more in a month than he saw in a year. The work was hard, but honest, and he'd been good at it. His crew foreman, Big Jim, used to say Marcus had hands that could coax straight lines out of crooked lumber. But then the economy shifted, construction slowed, and the crew got smaller every month until Marcus found himself holding a pink slip and wondering how he'd explain to Sophia that Daddy's job had gone away. Since then, it had been a parade of temporary positions, stocking overnight at a warehouse until they downsized, driving delivery trucks until gas prices made the routes unprofitable, washing dishes at restaurants that closed down after 6 months. Each job loss felt like another small failure, another step away from the father he'd promised Carmen he would be. The suit he wore today had been Carmen's idea, purchased 7 years ago when he'd interviewed for a supervisor position at the construction company. She'd insisted on the department store rather than the thrift shop, even though it meant eating. Pasta for 2 weeks straight. "You invest in yourself, mi amor," she'd said, straightening his collar in their bedroom mirror. You show them who you really are. He'd gotten that job, kept it for 3 years, until the accident changed everything. After Carmen died, the supervisor position felt too demanding, too much time away from Sophia when she needed him most. He'd stepped back to regular crew work, taking the pay cut in exchange for a schedule that let him pick Sophia up from school and help with homework. It had seemed like the right choice then. Now, sitting in this gleaming tower, he wondered if he'd been slowly building a trap for both of them. The elevator dinged softly, and Marcus watched a stream of people in expensive suits emerge. They moved with the confident stride of people who belonged in places like this, who never had to check their bank balance before buying coffee. He pulled at his collar again, wondering if everyone could see how out of place he was. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophia, sent from her friend Maria's phone, since they couldn't afford a cell plan for her yet. Good luck today, Dad. You've got this. Love you. Marcus smiled despite his nerves. Sophia always knew exactly what to say. She'd inherited her mother's gift for finding light in dark places, for believing in better days even when the evidence suggested otherwise. Last week, when they'd shared a single hamburger for dinner because it was all they could afford, Sophia had declared it the perfect size for sharing and insisted they split it exactly in half, down to counting the French fries. The receptionist, a polished woman in her 30s with kind eyes, looked up from her computer. Mr. Rodriguez, they're ready for you now. Conference room A, just down the hall to your right. Marcus stood, his knees slightly unsteady. He'd practiced his answers in the bathroom mirror that morning, rehearsing how he'd explain his work history, his reliability, his willingness to start at the bottom and work his way up. The janitorial position at Morrison Cleaning paid $12 an hour, which wasn't much, but it was steady. It came with basic health insurance after 90 days. Most importantly, it was a real job with real paychecks that would let him look Sophia in the eye without feeling like he was failing her. The hallway stretched before him, lined with abstract paintings that probably cost more than he'd made in the past 6 months. His reflection caught in the polished surface of a black granite wall, and for a moment he saw Carmen standing beside him, her hand on his shoulder. She used to do that before every important moment, a small gesture that somehow made him feel capable of anything. Conference room A had glass walls and a table that could seat 20 people. At the far end sat 3 individuals who looked like they'd never worried about a utility bill in their lives. The woman in the center, probably in her 50s, wore a navy blazer that screamed authority. To her left, a younger man in wire-rimmed glasses typed notes on a tablet. On her right, an older gentleman with silver hair and sharp eyes watched Marcus enter with an expression that was neither welcoming nor dismissive, simply evaluating. Marcus had expected a small office, maybe a desk and 2 chairs. He'd imagined shaking hands with a middle manager who'd ask about his availability and whether he had his own transportation. Instead, he found himself in what looked like a boardroom where decisions affecting thousands of people were made daily. "Please, have a seat," the woman said, gesturing to a chair across from them. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, Senior Vice President of Operations. This is David Chen, our Director of Human Resources, and Robert Morrison, our CEO. Marcus felt the color drain from his face. CEO. He was supposed to be interviewing for a janitorial position with Morrison Cleaning Services, but somehow he'd stumbled into the executive offices of what appeared to be Morrison's parent company, Pinnacle Industries. His mind raced, trying to figure out how to explain the mistake without looking like a complete fool. "I think there might be some confusion," Marcus began, his voice slightly hoarse. "I applied for a position with Morrison Cleaning Services. The janitorial opening?" The three executives exchanged glances. David Chen consulted his tablet, frowning slightly. Morrison Cleaning Services? Are you sure you're in the right place, Mr.? He glanced down at his notes. I'm sorry, I don't have your name on my list. Rodriguez, Marcus Rodriguez. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the folded job listing he'd cut from the newspaper. I have the posting right here. It said to come to Pinnacle Financial Tower, but maybe I got the floor wrong. Jennifer Walsh took the clipping and studied it carefully. This is interesting. Morrison Cleaning Services is actually one of our subsidiary companies. They usually conduct their interviews in the basement offices. She looked up at Marcus with curiosity rather than annoyance. How did you end up here? Marcus felt heat creeping up his neck. I asked at the information desk downstairs for Morrison interviews, and they directed me to the 42nd floor. I just assumed. He trailed off, realizing how foolish he must sound. Robert Morrison, who had been silent until now, leaned forward slightly. Rodriguez. Marcus Rodriguez. He repeated the name slowly, as if testing how it sounded. What did you do before applying for janitorial work, Mr. Rodriguez? The question caught Marcus off guard. He'd expected to be politely escorted to the correct floor, not questioned about his background by a CEO. Construction mostly. I was a crew supervisor for Hartwell Construction until about 4 years ago. Since then, it's been various positions. Warehouse work, delivery driving, restaurant work, whatever I could find. And why the career change? Jennifer Walsh asked, genuinely interested. Marcus hesitated. He'd learned that mentioning his daughter in interviews could be complicated. Some employers saw single fathers as unreliable, too distracted by family responsibilities. But something about the way these three were listening, really listening, made him want to tell the truth. My wife passed away 4 years ago. Car accident. I have an 11-year-old daughter, and after Carmen died, the supervisor position required too much overtime, too many evenings away from home. Sophia needed stability more than we needed the extra money. He paused, surprised by his own honesty. At least, that's what I thought then. Now, I'm not so sure I made the right choice. The room fell quiet. Marcus could hear the muffled sounds of traffic 42 floors below, the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. He wondered if he'd said too much, revealed too much weakness to people who probably made decisions based on quarterly reports and profit margins. Robert Morrison continued studying Marcus with those sharp eyes. 2018. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Were you working construction in 2018? Yes, sir. Most of that year anyway. Carmen was still... Marcus caught himself. Yes, I was with Hartwell Construction through the summer of 2018. Do you remember working on the Riverside Medical Center expansion? The new children's wing? Marcus blinked in surprise. Yes, absolutely. That was a good project. We finished ahead of schedule, actually. The whole crew was proud of that one. Something shifted in Robert Morrison's expression, though Marcus couldn't quite identify what it was. The CEO exchanged another glance with his colleagues, and Marcus had the strange feeling that the interview had just taken a turn he didn't understand. Mr. Rodriguez, Morrison said carefully, I'd like to ask you about something specific that happened during that project. Do you remember the incident with the scaffolding collapse? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He remembered, that day, with crystalline clarity, the way some traumatic moments burned themselves into memory with perfect, unwanted detail. It had been a Tuesday in July, hot enough that the asphalt felt soft under their boots. The crew had been working on the 4th floor of the new wing, installing window frames in what would become patient rooms. Yes, sir, I remember. Can you tell us what happened? Marcus looked around the conference room, wondering why a CEO would care about a construction incident from 5 years ago, but the three executives waited patiently, as if his answer mattered more than he could possibly understand. There was a family visiting the hospital that day, a man and his young son, maybe 7 or 8 years old. The kid had been in treatment for something serious, cancer, I think, and they were walking through the construction area because it was a shortcut to the parking garage. Marcus could see it all again. The father holding his son's hand, both of them looking tired in the way that only comes from too many hospital visits. The scaffolding on the north side had been damaged in a storm the night before. Management knew about it, said they'd have a crew out to repair it, but they were behind schedule and didn't want to stop work for the day. The safety inspector had signed off on it, said it was stable enough for light work. Marcus remembered arguing with his foreman about it. The scaffolding looked wrong, stressed in ways that made his stomach clench with worry. But he was crew, not management, and he'd been told to focus on his own section. I was installing window frames on the opposite side when I heard the metal start to groan. That sound metal makes when it's about to give way. I looked over and saw the father and son walking directly underneath the compromised section, and I could see some of the upper braces starting to buckle. The memory played out in slow motion, the way it had 1,000 times in his dreams over the years. The family walking, unaware of the danger above them. The scaffolding swaying slightly, in a breeze that shouldn't have been able to move it. The terrible certainty that someone was about to die. I dropped my tools and ran. Didn't think about it, just ran. I tackled them both, knocked them away from the scaffolding maybe 10 seconds before the whole thing came down. Probably 3. Tons of metal and planking crashed right where they'd been standing. Marcus fell silent, remembering the chaos that followed. The deafening crash, the dust clouds, the shouting, the little boy crying, not because he was hurt, but because he'd been scared by this stranger who'd suddenly knocked him to the ground. The father's initial anger, then confusion, then dawning understanding as he saw the twisted metal where they'd been walking. "The boy," Robert Morrison said quietly. "Do you remember anything else about him?" "He was brave," Marcus said without hesitation. "Braver than most adults I've known. While his father was thanking me, and the foreman was yelling about liability, and the safety inspector was trying to figure out what went wrong, that little boy looked up at me and said, 'Thank you for saving us, mister. My dad says angels come, in all shapes.'" Marcus smiled at the memory. He had this baseball cap, all beat up and faded, Cubs logo, wore it everywhere, his father said, even during treatments. Kid was fighting cancer, but he was worried about whether I was okay after tackling them onto the concrete. The silence in the conference room stretched longer this time. Marcus began to worry that he'd said something wrong, shared too much. The personal detail about what should have been a straightforward safety incident. He was about to apologize when Robert Morrison spoke again. "Mr. Rodriguez, that little boy was my grandson." The words landed like a physical impact. Marcus stared at the CEO, trying to process what he'd just heard. His mind raced backward, through the conversation, through the strange looks and careful questions, through the way Morrison had repeated his name like he was trying to place it. "Your grandson," Marcus repeated slowly. "Tommy Morrison. He was 8 years old in 2018, and he'd been fighting leukemia for 2 years. That day at the hospital was actually his last chemotherapy treatment. He'd been declared cancer-free the week before, and they were there for follow-up tests to confirm he was in complete remission." Robert Morrison's voice was steady, but Marcus could see emotion flickering behind his professional demeanor. "My son called me from the hospital that day, told me about the scaffolding collapse, about the construction worker who'd saved them both. He described you perfectly, gave me your name, said he'd tried to find a way to thank you properly, but the construction company said they couldn't share employee contact information. Marcus felt the world tilting slightly off its axis. I never expected thanks. I just did what anyone would have done. No, Morrison said firmly. You did what you would have done. Most people would have shouted a warning maybe. Some would have called out to security. You risked your own safety to protect strangers, and you did it without hesitation. My son said you hit that concrete hard enough that you were limping for the rest of the day. But you wouldn't let the paramedics check you out because you were more worried about Tommy. The details came flooding back. Marcus remembered his scraped palms, the bruised ribs that had ached for weeks afterward. He remembered the little boy's father pressing a business card into his hand, insisting that Marcus call if he ever needed anything. Marcus had lost the card somewhere in the chaos of the day, forgotten about it in the rush to finish the project and get home to his own family. Tommy's 23 now, Morrison continued. He graduated from Northwestern last year with a degree in engineering. He's been working for our company for 8 months, and he still talks about the day a construction worker saved his life. He calls you his guardian angel. Marcus felt tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. He beat the cancer. Complete remission, 5 years clean. He still wears Cubs hats, by the way, has a collection of about 30 now. Morrison smiled, and for the first time, Marcus saw not a CEO, but a grandfather whose family had been given a second chance. He wants to design safer construction equipment, actually. Says if one man hadn't been paying attention in 2018, he might not be here to help prevent future accidents. The confession hung in the air between them. Marcus thought about his own daughter, about the promise he'd made to Carmen to protect Sophia and give her the best life possible. He thought about that 8-year-old boy in the Cubs cap, fighting cancer and still worried about a stranger's well-being. He thought about the strange path that had led him to the wrong floor of this building, to a conversation he never could have imagined. Mr. Rodriguez, Jennifer Walsh said gently, before we go any further, I think we should clarify something. You applied for a janitorial position, but you're sitting in an interview for our chief financial officer opening. The salary difference is significant. Marcus almost laughed at the absurdity of it. I'm not qualified to be anyone's CFO. I barely made it through high school, and I've been unemployed for 8 months. I'm here because I need work, any work, that will let me take care of my daughter. What kind of work did you do as a construction supervisor? David Chen asked, his fingers poised over his tablet. Budgeting mostly, making sure projects stayed on schedule and under budget, coordinating with suppliers, managing crew schedules, tracking materials and labor costs. I was good with numbers, good at seeing where we were wasting time or money, Marcus shrugged. It's not exactly corporate finance, but I knew how to make a dollar stretch. How many people were on your crew? Varied by project, usually between 15 and 30 workers. During the medical center job, we had 32, guys plus subcontractors. Jennifer Walsh made a note on her legal pad. And your budget responsibilities? The Riverside project was about $4 million total. I managed day-to-day expenditures, tracked labor hours, coordinated material deliveries to minimize waste. And delays. We came in under budget by about $60,000 and finished 2 weeks early. Robert Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with renewed interest. $60,000 under budget on a $4 million project. That's better than most of our contracted construction managers achieve. Marcus felt a flush of pride, followed immediately by confusion. I'm not sure why that matters for a janitorial position. It doesn't, Morrison agreed, but it might matter for other opportunities. The conversation was moving in directions Marcus couldn't follow. He'd walked into this building hoping to land a $12 an hour job cleaning offices, and somehow he was discussing construction budgets with a CEO who remembered him from the most important day he'd probably ever lived. "Mr. Rodriguez," Morrison continued, "I've been looking for you for 5 years. My son tried to track you down after Tommy's recovery, but Hartwell Construction had gone out of business and we hit dead ends everywhere we turned. I wanted to thank you personally, and more than that, I wanted to find a way to repay what you did for my family." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus said quickly. "I was just doing my job." "No, you were doing something much more important than your job. You were being exactly the kind of person I want working for my company." Morrison glanced at his colleagues, some unspoken communication passing between them. "We have an opening in our project management division. It's not CFO level, but it pays well, comes with full benefits, and it would make use of your construction and budgeting experience." Marcus felt his heart start to race. "What kind of opening?" "Regional supervisor for our construction and renovation projects. You'd oversee multiple job sites, work with contractors to ensure projects stay on schedule and under budget, coordinate with our safety and compliance teams." Jennifer Walsh consulted her notes. "Starting salary is $75,000 plus performance bonuses, full health, dental and vision insurance from day one. 2 weeks paid vacation to start, building to 4 weeks after 5 years. The numbers hit Marcus like a physical blow. $75,000 was more than he'd ever made in a single year, more than he'd dreamed of making again. It was enough to move Sophia into a better apartment, maybe even a small house, enough to buy her new school clothes instead of hoping the thrift store had her size, enough to start saving for her college education, to give her the future Carmen had always wanted for her. "I don't understand," Marcus said slowly. "Why would you offer me a position like that? You barely know me." Robert Morrison smiled, and Marcus saw decades of business wisdom in his expression. "Mr. Rodriguez, I've been running this company for 23 years. I've hired hundreds of people, from entry-level workers to senior executives. I've learned that skills can be taught, but character can't. You showed your character in 2018 when you risked your own safety to protect my family. That's worth more to me than any resume or college degree." Marcus thought about Sophia, probably sitting in her 6th grade math class at that moment, worrying about whether her father would find work. He thought about the overdue bills stacked on their kitchen table, the careful way they'd been rationing food to make it last until his unemployment check arrived. He thought about Carmen's voice telling him to invest in himself, to show people who he really was. "I need to ask," Marcus said carefully, "about scheduling. My daughter, she's 11, and she needs me to be available. I can't take a position that requires constant travel or 70-hour weeks." "The position is primarily local," David Chen assured him. "Some travel, but rarely more than day trips to job sites within a 3-hour drive. Standard 40-hour work week, though occasionally you might need to visit a site in the evening if there's an emergency. And if Sophia gets sick or has a school event or needs me for something important," Jennifer Walsh smiled. "Mr. Rodriguez, this company values family. We have flex time policies, remote work options when possible, and we believe that employees who feel supported at home perform better at work. Your daughter's needs wouldn't be a hindrance to your career here." Marcus sat in silence for a long moment, trying to absorb everything that had happened in the past 30 minutes. He'd entered this building expecting to beg for a minimum wage, job cleaning offices, and instead he was being offered a career that could change everything for his family. "There's one more thing," Robert Morrison said quietly. "Tommy would like to meet you again, if you're willing. He's been hoping for 5 years to thank you properly." Marcus felt tears threatening again. "I'd like that very much." He's actually working on a project right now that I think you'd find interesting. He's designing new safety protocols for construction sites, trying to prevent the kind of accident that almost happened that day. He could use someone with your experience to help test and refine his ideas. The circle was completing itself in ways Marcus never could have imagined. The 8-year-old boy in the Cubs cap had grown up to become an engineer focused on construction safety, and now he wanted to work with the man who'd saved his life to make sure other families never face the same danger. "I have to ask," Marcus said, "what happened to the scaffolding company, the safety inspector who signed off on faulty equipment?" Morrison's expression darkened slightly. "There was an investigation. The scaffolding company was found negligent and lost their certification. The safety inspector was fired and faced criminal charges. We made sure that what happened that day could never happen again on any of our projects." Marcus nodded, satisfied. Justice had been served, and more importantly, other families had been protected. "Mr. Rodriguez," Jennifer Walsh said, "we'd like to offer you the position. Obviously, you'll want time to think about it, discuss it with your daughter. How much time? Take the weekend. Come in Monday morning if you're interested, and we'll get you started with HR, show you around the facilities, introduce you to the team you'd be working with." Marcus thought about going home to Sophia, about telling her that her father had finally found not just a job, but a career. He thought about calling his mother in Phoenix, about the pride in her voice when he told her that her son was going to be okay after all. He thought about Carmen, about the promises he'd made beside her hospital bed, and how this opportunity felt like the universe giving him a chance to keep those promises in ways he'd never dared hope for. "I don't need the weekend," Marcus said quietly. "I'd like to accept if you'll have me." Robert Morrison stood and extended his hand across the conference table. "Welcome to Pinnacle Industries, Mr. Rodriguez. I have a feeling this is going to be the beginning of something very good." As Marcus shook the CEO's hand, he felt the weight of 4 years of struggle lifting from his shoulders. Not completely, not all at once, but enough to let him breathe freely for the first time since Carmen died. He was going to be able to provide for Sophia, to give her the stability and opportunity she deserved. He was going to be the father he'd promised to be. Later, he would learn that Robert Morrison had instructed his HR department to create the regional supervisor position specifically for this moment, in case they ever found the construction worker who'd saved Tommy's life. The job was real. The responsibilities were genuine, but it had been crafted with Marcus in mind, a way for a grateful grandfather to repay a debt of life itself. But in that moment, sitting in the conference room 42 floors above the Chicago streets, Marcus simply felt grateful. Grateful for the mistake that had brought him to the wrong floor. Grateful for the courage he'd found on a summer day in 2018. And most of all, grateful for the second chance he was being given to build the life his daughter deserved. Marcus stood outside Lincoln Elementary School at 3:15, watching streams of children pour through the double doors like colorful confetti scattered by an invisible wind. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the manila envelope containing his new employment contract, the weight of it somehow both lighter and heavier than anything he'd ever carried. The signature was still wet on the papers inside, his name written in careful block letters next to a salary figure that kept making him blink in disbelief. Sophia emerged from the crowd of backpacks and lunchboxes, her worn sneakers scuffing against the concrete as she searched the pickup area for his familiar face. When their eyes met, her expression shifted from routine to curiosity. She could read him like a book written in her native language, and something in his posture told her this wasn't an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. "Dad?" she called, jogging, over with her oversized backpack bouncing against her small frame. "You look different. Did something happen at the interview?" Marcus crouched down to her eye level, his voice catching slightly. "Mija, we need to talk, but first, how was school?" Sophia studied his face with the intensity of someone who'd learned early to gauge adult moods for signs of trouble or relief. "Math test was okay. Mrs. Rodriguez said I might be ready for advanced classes next semester, but I told her we'd have to see about the fees." She paused, tilting her head. "Dad, you're doing that thing where you want to cry, but you're trying not to." The observation hit him squarely in the chest. His 11-year-old daughter had become an expert at reading the subtle signs of financial stress, the careful calculations that went into every decision about school supplies, after-school activities, and whether they could afford the $15 field trip to the Science Museum. She'd learned to temper her expectations before disappointment could take root. "Come on," Marcus said, standing and taking her hand. "Let's go to the park. I have something important to tell you." They walked the 3 blocks to Millennium Park in comfortable silence, Sophia's backpack now slung over Marcus's shoulder alongside. His own nervous energy. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the trees, and the playground buzzed with the cheerful chaos of children whose biggest worry was whether they'd have enough time for the monkey bars before their parents called them home. Marcus led Sophia to a bench overlooking the small pond, where ducks gathered hopefully near families with bags of breadcrumbs. This bench had become their place for serious conversations, a neutral territory where difficult topics could be discussed, away from the cramped apartment where walls seemed to close in during heavy discussions. "The interview didn't go the way I expected," Marcus began, watching Sophia's face carefully. "I ended up in the wrong place, talking to the wrong people, about the wrong job." Sophia's shoulders tensed slightly. She'd heard this story before in various forms. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong qualifications, wrong fit. The litany of reasons why promising opportunities turned into polite rejections. "But sometimes," Marcus continued, "being in the wrong place turns out to be exactly where you're supposed to be." He told her about the confusion at the tower, about sitting in a conference room with executives who should have been way beyond his reach. He told her about Robert Morrison and the questions that had seemed too specific, too personal for a routine interview. And then he told her about 2018, about the scaffolding and the little boy in the Cubs cap, and the split-second decision that had changed the trajectory of multiple lives. Sophia listened with the focused attention she usually reserved for her favorite books, her dark eyes growing wider as the story unfolded. When Marcus reached the part about Tommy Morrison and the cancer diagnosis, she unconsciously touched the small cross necklace she wore, a gift from her grandmother that she considered protective against all the world's uncertainties. "You saved him," she whispered when Marcus finished. "You actually saved someone's life." "I did what anyone would have done." "No, Dad, not anyone. You." Sophia's voice carried a certainty that made Marcus's chest tighten with emotion. "You always do the right thing, even when it's scary or hard or when nobody's watching. That's why Mom loved you so much." The mention of Carmen was like a gentle hand on an old wound, present but no longer sharp enough to make him flinch. Sophia rarely brought up her mother directly, but when she did, it was always with this kind of clarity that reminded Marcus why Carmen had been such an extraordinary person. "There's more," Marcus said softly. "They offered me a job. Not the cleaning position I applied for, but something else, something better." Sophia's expression shifted to cautious hope, the look of someone who'd learned not to count on good news until it was absolutely confirmed. "What kind of job?" Marcus explained. "About the regional supervisor position, about the salary and benefits that would change everything for them." He watched Sophia's face as the numbers sank in. saw the moment when she realized what this meant for school supplies and field trips, and maybe even the gymnastics classes she'd mentioned once before, quickly adding that they were probably too expensive anyway. $75,000, Sophia repeated slowly, as if testing whether the words felt real in her mouth. Dad, that's like rich people money. Marcus laughed despite himself. It's not rich people money, Misha. It's steady money, good money, enough money to stop worrying about every dollar. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, watching the ducks paddle across the pond in their endless search for dropped treats. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more vulnerable than her usual confident tone. Does this mean we don't have to move? The question caught Marcus off guard. Move? Who said anything about moving? I heard you on the phone with Abuela last week. You thought I was asleep, but I heard you talking about maybe having to find somewhere cheaper, maybe going to stay with her in Phoenix until you found steady work. Sophia's voice wobbled slightly. I've been really good about not asking for things because I didn't want to make it harder for you to pay rent. Marcus felt his heart break a little bit more, the way it did every time he discovered another small sacrifice his daughter had been making without his knowledge. She'd been rationing her own childhood, editing her dreams to fit their shrinking budget, and he'd been too wrapped up in his own struggle to see all the ways she was protecting him from her disappointment. Sophia, look at me. He waited until her dark eyes met his. We're not moving. We're not going anywhere unless it's somewhere better, somewhere we choose because we want to, not because we have to. Promise? I promise. In fact, I was thinking maybe it's time we started looking for a real apartment, one with 2 bedrooms, so you can have your own space, maybe even a small house with a yard where you could have a garden like Mom always wanted. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but they were the good kind, the kind that came from relief and possibility rather than loss and fear. She launched herself into Marcus's arms with the full force of 11 years old, nearly knocking him backward off the bench. I love you, Dad, she whispered against his shoulder. I'm so proud of you. Marcus held her tight, feeling 4 years of accumulated tension finally beginning to release from his shoulders. This was what he'd been fighting for, this moment, when he could give his daughter permission to hope again, to dream without the constant mental calculation of what they could afford. There's someone else I want you to meet, Marcus said when Sophia finally pulled back from the hug. The little boy I helped save. He's grown up now, and he works for the same company. His grandfather, Mr. Morrison, he wants to introduce us. Sophia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a small smudge of playground dirt across her cheek. What's he like now? I don't know yet, but I'm curious to find out. Mr. Morrison says he still wears Cubs hats. Like the one you got me for my birthday? Marcus smiled, remembering the careful budgeting that had gone into that $15 cap, how he justified it as both a birthday present and a practical item for sunny days. Just like that one. They sat together on the bench as the afternoon light began to soften toward evening, watching families pack up their picnic blankets and call children away from swing sets. Marcus felt a profound sense of anticipation that he hadn't experienced in years, the feeling that life was about to expand in ways he'd forgotten were possible. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Marcus glanced at the screen and felt his breath catch slightly. Mr. Rodriguez, this is Tommy Morrison. My grandfather gave me your number and said you might be willing to meet. I've been hoping for this conversation for 5 years. Would you and your daughter like to join my family for dinner this weekend? I promise the food is better than hospital cafeteria fare. Tommy... Marcus showed Sophia the message, watching her read it twice before looking up at him with a grin that reminded him so much of Carmen, it made his chest ache in the best possible way. He seems nice, Sophia said. Can we go? I think "We can," Marcus replied, typing back a response that felt like stepping through a door into an entirely new chapter of their lives. The rest of the week passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls that felt surreal in their normalcy. Marcus found himself calling the HR department at Pinnacle Industries to confirm details about health insurance enrollment, as if the act of discussing dental coverage and retirement contributions might somehow make the opportunity feel more real. Jennifer Walsh had assigned him a temporary mentor, a woman named Patricia Hernandez, who'd been with the company for 12 years and understood the complexities of managing multiple construction projects. Patricia had a direct, no-nonsense communication style that reminded Marcus of the best foremen he'd worked with, people who could explain complicated processes in simple terms without making you feel stupid for asking questions. "The learning curve is steep, but manageable," Patricia told him. During their first phone conversation, "You've got the practical experience, which is worth more than any business degree when you're dealing with contractors who try to inflate costs or push back deadlines. The corporate side is just a matter of learning our systems and procedures." Marcus had spent Thursday afternoon at the public library using their computers to research Pinnacle Industries and familiarize himself with the scope of projects he'd be overseeing. The company had an impressive portfolio of commercial construction, everything from office buildings to medical facilities to educational complexes. Their safety record was exemplary, their completion times consistently ahead of schedule, and their client satisfaction ratings were among the highest in the region. What struck Marcus most was the company culture described in employee testimonials on their website. People talked about feeling valued, about work-life balance, about opportunities for advancement based on merit rather than politics. After years of scrambling for temporary positions with employers who treated workers as interchangeable parts, the idea of building a career with a company that invested in its people felt almost too good to be true. Friday evening, Marcus stood in front of his closet trying to decide what constituted appropriate attire for dinner with the Morrison family. His wardrobe had shrunk considerably over the past few years, reduced to essential items that could serve multiple purposes. The suit he'd worn to the interview was his only formal option, but it seemed too stuffy for a family dinner. Sophia appeared in his doorway wearing her best dress, a navy blue piece with small white flowers that had been a hand-me-down from his sister's daughter. She'd brushed her hair until it shone and carefully applied the little bit of lip gloss. She was allowed for special occasions. "You look beautiful, Misha," Marcus said, meaning it completely. "You look nervous," Sophia replied with her characteristic directness. "It's just dinner, Dad. They're nice people, right?" "They seem to be, but this is important, Sophia. These people, they're giving us a chance to change everything about our lives. I want to make a good impression." Sophia sat on the edge of his bed, watching him hold up shirt options with the serious expression she wore when helping him make difficult decisions. "Dad, do you remember what you told me when I was nervous about starting middle school?" Marcus paused in his shirt comparison. "Remind me. You said that if people are worth knowing, they'll like you for who you really are. And if they don't like you for who you really are, then they're not worth knowing." Sophia tilted her head. "Mr. Morrison already knows who you really are. He saw it 5 years ago when you saved his grandson. You don't have to pretend to be anyone else." The wisdom in her words hit Marcus with surprising force. His 11-year-old daughter had just reminded him of something he'd forgotten in his anxiety about making a good impression. Robert Morrison hadn't offered him a job because of his resume or his interview skills. He'd offered it because of his character, demonstrated in a moment when Marcus hadn't been trying to impress anyone. "You're right," Marcus said, selecting a simple button-down shirt in light blue. "Thank you for reminding me." "That's what family does," Sophia said with a shrug. "We help each other remember the important stuff." The Morrison family lived in Lincoln Park, in a neighborhood where tree-lined streets were dotted with elegant brownstones and small front gardens that suggested both affluence and good taste. Marcus Parallel parked his aging Honda between a BMW and a Mercedes, trying not to think about how his car's rust spots and duct tape patches might look to the neighbors. The Morrison brownstone was painted a warm cream color with dark green, shutters and window boxes full of late-season flowers. A brass plaque beside the front door bore the house number in elegant script, and soft light glowed from windows that suggested comfort rather than ostentation. Tommy Morrison answered the door before Marcus had finished climbing the front steps. He was tall and lean, with his grandfather's sharp eyes and an easy smile that immediately put Marcus at ease. The Cubs hat from 2018 had been replaced by a neat haircut and wire-rimmed glasses, but something in his expression was unmistakably the same brave 8-year-old who'd worried about a stranger's well-being after being knocked to the ground. "Mr. Rodriguez," Tommy said, extending his hand, "I can't tell you how long I've been looking forward to this. Marcus, please, and this is my daughter, Sophia." Tommy crouched down to Sophia's eye level with the natural ease of someone comfortable around children. "Sophia, it's wonderful to meet you. Your dad is a real hero, you know." Sophia beamed with pride. "I know. He doesn't like it when I say that, but it's true." Come in, Tommy said, leading them into a foyer with polished hardwood floors and family photographs covering one wall. "Mom's finishing up in the kitchen, and Grandpa's in the living room pretending he's not anxious about meeting you again." The house had the lived-in warmth of a place where multiple generations had gathered for holidays and birthdays and ordinary Tuesday evenings. The furniture was comfortable rather than formal, and bookshelves lined most available wall space, creating the impression of a family that valued learning and conversation. Robert Morrison rose from a leather armchair as they entered the living room, his business suit replaced by khakis and a cardigan that made him look more like a favorite uncle than a corporate CEO. His smile was genuine and slightly nervous, as if he too felt the weight of this reunion. "Marcus," he said, shaking hands warmly, "thank you for coming. And you must be Sophia. Tommy's told us wonderful things about you." Sophia glanced at Tommy with curiosity. "You told them about me? We just met." Tommy laughed. "Your dad's been talking about you non-stop since Monday. He's very proud of you." A woman emerged from what Marcus assumed was the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She had Tommy's easy smile and Robert Morrison's sharp intelligence, combined with the kind of natural warmth that made strangers feel like welcome guests within minutes of meeting her. "I'm Sarah Morrison, Tommy's mother," she said, hugging Marcus as if he were a long-time family friend. "We owe you so much more than dinner, but it seemed like a good place to start." The meal was served in a dining room that managed to be both elegant and comfortable, with a table large enough for the extended family gatherings that clearly happened regularly. Sarah had prepared roast chicken with herbs, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans almondine, and fresh bread that filled the house with the kind of scents that transformed a building into a home. Conversation flowed easily, guided by Tommy's questions about Marcus's construction experience and Sophia's shy but thoughtful observations about everything from the family's book collection to the framed photographs that told the story of Tommy's childhood and recovery. "Tell me about the engineering work you're doing now," Marcus said to Tommy as they passed serving dishes around the table family style. Tommy's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of someone passionate about their work. "I'm focused on construction, site safety systems, smart scaffolding that can monitor its own structural integrity, wearable devices that alert workers to potential hazards, predictive software that can identify high-risk situations before accidents happen." "Like what happened to us," Marcus said quietly. Exactly like what happened to us. That day changed everything for me, Marcus. Not just because you saved my life, but because it showed me how easily preventable that accident should have been. The scaffolding company knew they had damaged equipment. The safety inspector knew the repairs hadn't been completed. Multiple people made decisions that put lives at risk because fixing the problem would have been inconvenient and expensive. Sarah reached over and squeezed her son's hand. Tommy spent years in and out of hospitals, watching how much difference good systems and protocols could make. He saw how life and death decisions came down to whether people followed proper procedures. The cancer treatment taught me that details matter, Tommy added. Every medication dose, every test result, every safety protocol exists because someone, somewhere, learned from a mistake that cost someone else their life. I want to be part of the solution that prevents other families from going through preventable tragedies. Marcus felt a profound sense of connection to this young man whose life had intersected with his own in such a dramatic way. Tommy had taken the trauma of his accident and his illness and transformed it into purpose, channeling his experience into work that could protect others. I'd like to help, Marcus said, if you think my experience would be useful. Are you kidding? Tommy leaned forward eagerly. You've got 15 years of construction experience, including supervisory work on major projects. You know what it's like to be responsible for worker safety when there are budget pressures and deadline pressures and every kind of pressure imaginable. That's exactly the perspective I need. Robert Morrison watched this exchange with obvious satisfaction. Tommy's been asking for someone with real-world construction experience to join his safety research team. The timing couldn't be better. Sophia had been following the conversation with the intense focus she brought to subjects that interested her. Mr. Tommy, she said politely, do you still have the hat you were wearing when my dad saved you? Tommy grinned and excused himself from the table, returning a moment later with a battered Cubs cap that showed its age in every frayed edge and faded logo. This hat went through 2 years of chemotherapy with me. The nurses said it was my good luck charm. He placed it gently on Sophia's head, where it immediately slipped down over her eyes. What do you think? Does it suit you? Sophia pushed the brim up so she could see, giggling at how enormous it felt. It's perfect. Did it really bring you good luck? The best kind, Tommy said seriously. It brought me your dad when I needed him most. After dinner, the adults lingered over coffee while Sophia and Tommy examined his collection of engineering books, bonding over shared interest in how things worked and why they sometimes didn't work the way they were supposed to. Marcus found himself relaxing completely for the first time in years, surrounded by people who seemed genuinely interested in his thoughts and experiences. I have to ask, Marcus said to Robert Morrison, why create a position specifically for me? You could have found ways to thank me that didn't involve restructuring your company. Morrison considered the question carefully. Marcus, I've built this company by surrounding myself with people of exceptional character. Technical skills can be taught, but integrity and courage either exist or they don't. What you did in 2018 told me everything I needed to know about your character. He paused, glancing toward Tommy and Sophia, who were now examining blueprints spread across the coffee table. But beyond that, I believe in the power of full circles. You saved my grandson's life, which allowed him to grow up and pursue work that could save other lives. Now you're in a position to contribute to that work, to be part of something larger than any of us could accomplish alone. Sarah Morrison nodded in agreement. Robert's always believed that the universe has a way of bringing the right people together at the right time. Sometimes it just takes 5 years for all the pieces to fall into place. Marcus thought about the chain of events that had brought him to this moment. Carmen's death leading to his career change, the months of unemployment forcing him to apply for positions he was overqualified for, The simple mistake that had brought him to the wrong floor of the right building at the exact moment when his past heroism could be recognized and rewarded. "I'm grateful," Marcus said simply, "for all of it, even the hard parts that led me here." As the evening wound down, Tommy pulled Marcus aside for a private conversation, while Sophia helped Sarah clear the dinner dishes despite multiple protests that guests shouldn't work. "I want you to know," Tommy said quietly, "that not a day has gone by in 5 years when I haven't thought about what you did for us. I've tried to live my life in a way that would honor your sacrifice to become someone worthy of being saved." Marcus felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. "Tommy, you don't owe me anything. You were just a kid who needed help." "Maybe, but that kid grew up believing that people are fundamentally good, that strangers will risk their own safety to protect others, that heroism exists in ordinary moments when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things." Tommy's voice was steady but emotional. "You gave me faith in humanity at a time when I could have easily lost it." The weight of that responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders, not as a burden, but as a gift. He realized that saving Tommy's life had been only the beginning of the impact he'd had. The real legacy was in the man Tommy had become, the work he was doing, the lives he might save through his engineering innovations. "There's something else," Tommy continued. "I'd like Sophia to meet my nephew, Kevin. He's about her age, and he's been working on a robotics project for the school science fair. I think they'd get along well." Marcus smiled at the suggestion. Sophia had always been mechanically inclined, drawn to puzzles and problems that required both logic and creativity. The idea of her having a friend who shared those interests felt like another small gift from an evening full of unexpected blessings. As they prepared to leave, Robert Morrison pressed a business card into Marcus's hand. "This has my direct phone number," he said. "If you need anything at all, as you transition into this new position, I want you to call me personally." The drive home passed in comfortable silence. Sophia curled up in the passenger seat with Tommy's old Cubs cap still perched on her head. Marcus found himself thinking about circles and connections, about how a single moment of courage could ripple outward through years and lives in ways impossible to predict or measure. "Dad," Sophia said sleepily as they pulled into their apartment complex, "I think everything's going to be okay now." Marcus looked at his daughter, at the trust and contentment in her expression, and felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of their future. For the first time in 4 years, he believed her completely. "Yeah, Mija," he said softly, "I think you're right." Marcus's first day at Pinnacle Industries arrived with the crisp clarity of an October morning that promised both challenge and impossibility. He stood in the lobby of the building where his life had changed just 2 weeks earlier, but this time he carried a leather briefcase Patricia Hernandez had recommended and wore a confidence that felt both foreign and surprisingly natural. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt different now. Instead of nervous uncertainty, Marcus experienced the focused anticipation of someone about to begin work they were genuinely excited to perform. The regional supervisor office Patricia had shown him during his orientation was modest but functional, with windows overlooking the construction site of a new medical complex that would be his first major project. Patricia was waiting with coffee and a stack of project files that represented the scope of his new responsibilities. 3 major construction projects in various stages of completion, 2 renovation contracts requiring delicate coordination with occupied buildings, and 1 emergency repair job at a downtown office tower that had discovered structural issues during a routine inspection. "The medical complex is your priority," Patricia explained, spreading blueprints across the conference table in his office. "Riverside Regional Hospital is expanding their cardiac surgery wing, and they're working under a federal grant that requires Completion by March. The timeline is tight, but manageable if everything goes according to plan. Marcus studied the blueprints with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent years translating architectural dreams into concrete reality. The project was ambitious, a 4-story addition that would house operating suites, recovery rooms, and specialized equipment requiring precise environmental controls. The kind of construction where attention to detail could literally mean the difference between life and death for future patients. What's the current status? Foundation work is complete. Structural steel is ahead of schedule, but there have been some concerns about the electrical contractor. They've missed 2 deadlines for installing the specialized power systems required for the operating rooms. Patricia pulled out a folder marked with red flags. The hospital administration is getting nervous. Marcus flipped through the electrical contractor's reports, noting gaps in documentation and vague explanations for delays that should have been straightforward installations. His construction experience had taught him to recognize the signs of contractors who were either incompetent or overwhelmed, both of which could be equally dangerous on a project of this magnitude. Have you been out to the site recently? Last week. I'm scheduled to take you there this afternoon for a complete walkthrough. The general contractor is expecting us at 2 o'clock. The morning passed quickly as Marcus familiarized himself with Pinnacle Industries' project management software, safety protocols, and reporting procedures. Everything was more sophisticated than the systems he'd used in his construction days, but the underlying principles were identical. Track progress, identify problems early, maintain clear communication between all parties, and never let budget pressures compromise safety standards. Just before lunch, his phone rang with a call from an unfamiliar number. Marcus answered to hear a voice that was immediately recognizable despite the years that had passed. Marcus Rodriguez, this is Jim Sullivan from Hartwell Construction. I heard through the grapevine that you'd landed on your feet with Pinnacle Industries. Big Jim had been Marcus's foreman during his best years in construction, a man whose combination of technical expertise and genuine concern for his crew had made even the most challenging projects feel manageable. Hearing his voice brought back memories of early morning coffee in site trailers and the satisfaction of completing complex builds ahead of schedule. Jim, it's good to hear from you. How did you know about Pinnacle? Word travels fast in this business, especially when someone makes the kind of jump you just made. Listen, I'm calling because I've got some information you might find useful about your electrical contractor situation at the hospital project. Marcus felt his attention sharpen. What kind of information? Apex Electrical Systems. I worked with them on 2 projects last year, and both times they overpromised and underdelivered. They bid low to get the contract, then nickel and dime change orders to make up the difference. Worse than that, they've got a habit of cutting corners on installations that aren't immediately visible. The conversation confirmed Marcus's instincts about the red flags in Apex's documentation. Jim provided specific details about code violations and safety shortcuts he'd witnessed, information that could help Marcus build a case for bringing in additional oversight or potentially replacing the contractor if necessary. I appreciate the heads up, Jim. This is exactly the kind of situation where local knowledge makes all the difference. That's what we do for each other in this business. Besides, I remember how you handled problems back in the day. You always found solutions that protected the workers and the project. I figure Pinnacle's lucky to have you. After ending the call, Marcus spent the rest of the morning researching Apex Electrical Systems through industry databases and safety inspection records. The pattern Jim had described was clearly documented in their recent project history. A series of delays, cost overruns, and remediation work that suggested systematic issues with their project management. The drive to the Riverside Regional Hospital construction site took Marcus through neighborhoods he remembered from his early days in Chicago, areas where working families lived in modest homes and raised children who attended schools that did their best with limited resources. The contrast between these streets and the affluent Lincoln Park neighborhood where the Morrisons lived reminded Marcus of how dramatically his circumstances had changed in just 2 weeks. The construction site buzzed with the controlled chaos that Marcus remembered from his best days in the industry. Workers in hard hats and safety vests moved with purpose between towering cranes and stacks of materials, their movements choreographed by decades of experience and the kind of professional pride that turned construction sites into temporary communities united by shared goals. Patricia introduced Marcus to Jake Morrison, the general contractor who shared a last name with his new employer, but no family relationship. Jake was a third-generation builder whose company had earned its reputation through consistent quality and reliability, the kind of contractor who understood that successful projects required collaboration rather than confrontation. Marcus Rodriguez, Jake said, shaking hands with the firm grip of someone whose livelihood depended on accurate assessments of character. Patricia tells me you've got serious construction experience. We could use someone who understands how the pieces fit together. The site walkthrough revealed both impressive progress and concerning gaps. The structural work was indeed ahead of schedule, with steel beams rising toward the autumn sky in precise alignment with architectural specifications. The concrete work showed the kind of attention to detail that suggested skilled craftsmen who took pride in their trade. But the electrical installations told a different story. Conduits were installed in configurations that would make future maintenance difficult. Junction boxes were placed in locations that violated both building codes and common sense, and several circuits showed signs of hasty work that could create safety hazards once the systems were energized. How long has Apex been on this project? Marcus asked Jake as they examined a particularly problematic installation in what would become a critical care recovery room. 4 months, and they've been behind schedule since day 2. They started with a crew of 8 electricians, but they're down to 4 now, and 2 of those are apprentices who shouldn't be working unsupervised on systems this complex. Marcus pulled out his phone and took detailed photographs of the questionable installations, documenting issues that would need to be addressed before the hospital could safely use these facilities. Each photograph represented potential life and death, consequences if electrical systems failed during critical medical procedures. What's their explanation for the delays? Jake's expression darkened. Everything from supply chain issues to permit delays to change orders from the hospital. But I've been doing this for 23 years, and I know the difference between legitimate problems and contractors who are in over their heads. Patricia had been taking notes throughout the walkthrough, documenting issues that would need to be addressed in Marcus's first official report. The scope of necessary remediation was extensive enough to potentially impact the project timeline and budget, exactly the kind of situation that required careful navigation between competing interests. We need a meeting with Apex's project manager, Marcus decided, tomorrow morning here on site with representatives from the hospital administration. These issues aren't going to resolve themselves, and we can't afford to let them compound. That evening, Marcus found himself back in his small apartment, surrounded by project files and laptop computer screens, displaying electrical code specifications and safety protocols. Sophia sat at their kitchen table working on homework, occasionally glancing over at her father with the proud expression she'd worn since learning about his new position. "Dad, you look like you're solving important problems," she observed, looking up from her math worksheets. I'm trying to make sure that when sick people go to the new hospital, all the machines that help them get better will work properly. Sophia nodded with the serious expression she reserved for discussions about topics that affected people's well-being. Like the machines that helped Tommy when he was sick. Exactly like that. The parallel hadn't occurred to Marcus until Sophia mentioned it, but his first major project at Pinnacle Industries was focused on the same type of medical facility where Tommy Morrison had received the treatment that saved his life. The circle of connection seemed to extend in every direction, linking past actions to present responsibilities in ways that felt both coincidental and inevitable. His phone buzzed with a text message from Tommy Morrison. Heard from Grandpa that you're working on the Riverside project. Would love to hear how the safety protocols are being implemented. Coffee this weekend? Marcus typed back a response accepting the invitation, realizing that Tommy's expertise in construction safety systems could provide valuable insights for addressing the electrical contractor problems. The collaboration Patricia had mentioned during his orientation was already beginning to develop naturally. The next morning brought the kind of autumn weather that made Chicago feel like the most beautiful city in the world, with clear skies and temperatures that reminded everyone why they endured the harsh winters for moments like these. Marcus arrived at the construction site 30 minutes early, wanting time to review the problematic installations with fresh eyes before the confrontational meeting that lay ahead. Jake Morrison was already on site, along with two of his senior foremen who'd been documenting safety concerns about Apex's work for several weeks. Their reports painted a picture of a contractor struggling with both technical competence and project management, creating risks that extended beyond simple schedule delays. Marcus, I'm glad you're taking this seriously, Jake said as they examined conduit installations that clearly violated electrical codes. I've been in this business long enough to know when corners are being cut, and this job has more corners missing than a circle. The hospital's chief of facilities, Dr. Margaret Chen, arrived precisely on time, accompanied by the procurement manager who'd been responsible for selecting Apex electrical systems from a field of bidders. Dr. Chen had the no-nonsense demeanor of someone responsible for maintaining complex systems that couldn't afford to fail, and her questions demonstrated both technical understanding and appropriate concern about timeline impacts. Mr. Rodriguez, I understand this is your first week with Pinnacle Industries, but we need someone to take ownership of this situation. The cardiac surgery wing is scheduled to open in March, and we have patients whose lives depend on that timeline. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, not as a burden, but as a clarifying force that brought his priorities into sharp focus. This wasn't about corporate politics or contractor relationships or budget considerations. This was about ensuring that life-saving medical equipment would function reliably when critically ill patients needed it most. Dr. Chen, I understand the stakes involved, and I want to assure you that we're going to resolve these issues. The question is whether we can bring Apex's work up to acceptable standards quickly enough to maintain your timeline, or whether we need to bring in additional expertise to remediate their installations. Apex's project manager, Tony Castellanos, arrived 15 minutes late with a folder full of excuses and explanations that demonstrated either remarkable ignorance of electrical codes or deliberate disregard for safety standards. His responses to specific technical questions revealed gaps in knowledge that would have been concerning for an apprentice electrician, much less someone responsible for supervising complex medical facility installations. Mr. Castellanos, Marcus said, after listening to 20 minutes of justifications that failed to address fundamental safety concerns, I need you to help me understand something. This junction box installation in Recovery Room 4 violates Section 404(8) of the National Electrical Code regarding placement near patient care areas. Can you explain how this installation was approved by your quality control process? Tony's stammered response made it clear that Apex either lacked adequate quality control procedures or had failed to implement them consistently. Either scenario was unacceptable for a project where electrical system failures could directly impact patient safety. The meeting concluded with Marcus issuing a formal notice requiring Apex to submit detailed remediation plans within 48 hours, along with documentation of additional certified electricians who would be assigned to bring their work up to code standards. The alternative, clearly implied but not explicitly stated, was termination of their contract and replacement with a more competent contractor. Dr. Chen pulled Marcus aside as the meeting disbanded. "Mr. Rodriguez, I appreciate your direct approach to this situation. We've been getting excuses and delays for months, but this is the first time someone has focused on specific solutions rather than general reassurances. Doctor, I have an 11-year-old daughter, and if she ever needs the kind of care this facility will provide, I want to know that every electrical system was installed and tested to the highest possible standards. Personal stakes have a way of clarifying professional priorities." The afternoon brought Marcus back to his office, where he spent several hours documenting the morning's findings and developing contingency plans for various scenarios ranging from Apex's successful remediation to complete contractor replacement. Each option carried different timeline and budget implications, but all of them prioritized patient safety over convenience or cost considerations. Patricia stopped by late in the afternoon to review his progress and provide guidance on corporate procedures for contractor performance issues. Her experience with similar situations proved invaluable in helping Marcus navigate the balance between firmness and fairness that would be necessary to resolve the problems constructively. "You handled that meeting well," Patricia said, reviewing Marcus's documentation. "Firm but professional, focused on solutions rather than blame. That's exactly the approach that works with both contractors and clients. I learned from some good foremen who understood that construction problems are usually people problems. Fix the people issues, and the technical problems become manageable." Robert Morrison is going to want a briefing on this situation. He takes medical facility projects personally, especially anything involving cardiac care. His wife had heart surgery at Riverside Regional 3 years ago, and he credits their cardiac team with saving her life. The information added another layer of personal stakes to Marcus's handling of the electrical contractor issues. Robert Morrison's commitment to excellence wasn't just corporate policy, it was informed by direct experience with the life and death importance of reliable medical facility infrastructure. That evening, Marcus found himself having dinner with Sophia at their small kitchen table, sharing details about his day that she absorbed with the intense focus she brought to subjects that mattered to real people's lives. Her questions demonstrated the kind of logical thinking that reminded Marcus of her mother's analytical mind. "Dad, if the electrical work isn't done right, could people get hurt?" "That's what we're working to prevent. Medical equipment needs reliable electricity to function properly, and if systems fail at the wrong time, it could be very dangerous for patients." Sophia nodded with the gravity of someone who understood that her father's work carried genuine responsibility for other people's well-being. "So you're like a guardian angel for sick people, making sure everything works when they need it most." The comparison hit Marcus with unexpected emotional force. The idea that his new career would allow him to protect vulnerable people, to use his experience and skills in service of something larger than personal advancement, felt like a profound alignment of purpose and opportunity. His phone rang with a call from Jake Morrison, reporting that Apex Electrical Systems had just informed him they were withdrawing from the project, effective immediately rather than submitting remediation plans. The news was both disappointing and relieving. removing an incompetent contractor but creating immediate challenges for maintaining the project timeline. Jake, do you have recommendations for replacement contractors who could take over the electrical work? I've got 3 companies in mind, all of them with solid reputations for medical facility work. 2 of them actually bid on the original contract but lost to Apex because their prices were higher. Sometimes you get what you pay for. Marcus spent the rest of the evening researching the recommended electrical contractors, reviewing their project portfolios and safety records to identify the best option for completing the hospital's electrical installations. The process reminded him of his construction days, when contractor selection could make the difference between successful project completion and months of expensive problems. By midnight, he had drafted a comprehensive report documenting the Apex situation and recommending emergency contractor replacement procedures that would minimize timeline impacts while ensuring all electrical work met or exceeded code requirements. The report would be on Robert Morrison's desk first thing in the morning, along with detailed cost projections and timeline adjustments. As Marcus finally closed his laptop and prepared for bed, he reflected on how dramatically his professional life had changed in just 2 weeks. Instead of worrying about unemployment benefits and overdue bills, he was making decisions that could affect hospital operations and patient care. The responsibility was sobering, but it was also energizing in ways he hadn't experienced since his early days as a construction supervisor. Sophia appeared in his doorway wearing her pajamas and carrying the stuffed rabbit that had been her companion since early childhood. "Dad, are you happy with your new job?" "Very happy, Mija. It feels good to be doing work that really matters." "Mom would be proud of you," Sophia said, with the matter-of-fact certainty that always accompanied her references to Carmen. She used to say that the best jobs were the ones where you got to help people. Marcus felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. Carmen would indeed be proud, not just of his professional success, but of the way this opportunity was allowing him to provide for Sophia while contributing to something meaningful. The promise he'd made beside Carmen's hospital bed was being fulfilled in ways he never could have imagined. The weekend brought the coffee meeting with Tommy Morrison that Marcus had been anticipating since accepting the invitation. They met at a small cafe near Northwestern University, where Tommy was auditing graduate courses in engineering safety systems as part of his ongoing professional development. Tommy arrived carrying a tablet computer loaded with presentations about construction site safety innovations that could have direct applications to the hospital project. His enthusiasm for the technical details was infectious, and Marcus found himself drawn into discussions about sensor networks and predictive analytics that could identify potential safety hazards before they became actual dangers. "The electrical contractor problems you've been dealing with are exactly why I'm passionate about this work," Tommy explained, showing Marcus footage of construction sites where automated systems monitored installation quality in real time. Human oversight is essential, but technology can catch problems that even experienced supervisors might miss. The conversation ranged from specific technical solutions to broader questions about how construction industry culture could be changed to prioritize safety and quality over speed and cost-cutting. Marcus shared stories from his construction days about contractors who had compromised safety standards, while Tommy provided examples of innovative companies that were proving that high standards and profitability could coexist. "Marcus, I have a proposal for you. My safety research team is developing new protocols for medical facility construction, and we need someone with real-world project management experience to help test our systems. Would you be interested in making the Riverside project a pilot program for some of our innovations?" The suggestion offered exciting possibilities for incorporating cutting-edge safety measures into Marcus's first major project, while contributing to research that could benefit future construction efforts. The collaboration would also strengthen his professional relationship with Tommy and potentially establish Marcus as a leader in construction safety innovation. What kind of timeline are we talking about? The systems are ready for field testing now. We could have monitoring equipment installed within a week, and we'd provide technical support throughout the project. In exchange, we get real-world data about how the systems perform under actual construction conditions. Marcus agreed to discuss the proposal with Patricia and Robert Morrison, recognizing that the pilot program could provide valuable protection against the kind of contractor problems they just experienced with Apex Electrical Systems. The conversation concluded with plans for Tommy to visit the construction site and assess the feasibility of implementing the safety monitoring systems. Sunday afternoon brought a phone call from Dr. Chen at Riverside Regional Hospital reporting that she'd received preliminary proposals from the 3 electrical contractors Jake Morrison had recommended. All 3 companies had provided detailed timelines and cost estimates that suggested the electrical work could be completed on schedule despite the setback with Apex. Mr. Rodriguez, I want to thank you for your handling of this situation. In 24 hours, you've accomplished more toward resolving our electrical contractor problems than we'd seen in the previous 4 months. The hospital administration is very impressed with your professionalism and competence. The praise felt good, but Marcus recognized that the real test would come in the weeks ahead as the new electrical contractor took over the complex installation work. Success would be measured not in management decisions, but in the reliable operation of life-saving medical equipment when the cardiac surgery wing opened for patient care. Monday morning arrived with the crisp energy of a fresh start and new challenges. Marcus found himself looking forward to the drive to his office, to the project files waiting on his desk, and to the problems that would require his attention and expertise. For the first time in years, he was excited about going to work. The electrical contractor selection meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock, with representatives from all 3 recommended companies presenting their proposals for taking over the hospital's electrical installations. Marcus had spent Sunday evening reviewing their credentials and developing questions that would help identify the contractor best suited for the project's demanding requirements. Patricia arrived early to help Marcus prepare for the presentations, bringing coffee and the kind of strategic insights that came from years of managing contractor relationships. Her guidance about reading between the lines of contractor proposals proved invaluable in identifying subtle indicators of competence and reliability. Remember, Patricia advised as they reviewed the evaluation criteria, the lowest bid isn't necessarily the best value. Medical facilities require specialized expertise that costs more upfront, but saves money and lives in the long run. The first presentation came from Meridian Electrical Services, a mid-sized company with extensive experience in healthcare facility construction. Their project manager, Susan Walsh, demonstrated both technical competence and understanding of the specialized requirements for medical equipment installations. Her questions about the hospital's specific needs showed attention to detail that had been notably absent from Apex's approach. Miss Walsh, Marcus asked, how would your company handle the remediation work required to bring the existing installations up to code standards? Mr. Rodriguez, we've reviewed the documentation you provided, and we estimate approximately 3 weeks of remediation work before we can proceed with new installations. That includes complete rewiring of the critical care recovery rooms and replacement of several junction boxes that were incorrectly positioned. The second presentation came from Advanced Medical Systems, a specialized contractor that worked exclusively on healthcare facilities. Their project manager, David Kim, provided detailed specifications for redundant power systems and emergency backup procedures that exceeded the hospital's basic requirements, but would provide additional protection for patients whose lives depended on continuous electrical power. Mr. Kim, your proposal includes systems that weren't part of the original specifications. Can you explain the rationale for these additions? Mr. Rodriguez, cardiac surgery patients are particularly vulnerable to power interruptions. Our enhanced backup systems would ensure that critical life support equipment continues operating even during extended power outages. The additional cost is minimal compared to the potential consequences of system failures. The third presentation came from Chicago Medical Construction, a large contractor with an impressive portfolio of major healthcare projects. Their project manager, Robert Chen, focused primarily on timeline and cost considerations, with less attention to the specialized requirements that distinguished medical facilities from conventional commercial construction. After all three presentations concluded, Marcus and Patricia spent an hour evaluating the proposals against both technical requirements and practical considerations. The choice between Meridian and Advanced Medical Systems was difficult, as both companies demonstrated excellent qualifications with different strengths. "What's your instinct telling you?" Patricia asked as they reviewed their evaluation notes. Advanced Medical Systems. They cost more, but their focus on patient safety aligns with our priorities. The enhanced backup systems David Kim described could make the difference between life and death during emergencies. The decision to recommend Advanced Medical Systems represented Marcus's first major contractor selection as a Pinnacle Industries regional supervisor. The choice carried both financial and safety implications that would affect hospital operations for decades to come. Exactly the kind of decision that justified his salary and demonstrated his value to the company. Robert Morrison's approval of the contractor recommendation came within an hour, along with a note expressing confidence in Marcus's judgment and appreciation for his thorough evaluation process. The endorsement felt like both validation and encouragement to continue trusting his instincts about complex technical decisions. By the end of his second week at Pinnacle Industries, Marcus had successfully resolved a major contractor crisis, implemented enhanced safety monitoring systems, and established professional relationships that would serve him well throughout his career. The transition from unemployment to senior project management had been both challenging and exhilarating, proving that his construction experience had prepared him for responsibilities he'd never imagined pursuing. The spring sunshine streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Riverside Regional Hospital Cardiac Surgery Wing carried with it the warmth of completion and new beginnings. Marcus stood in the main corridor of the facility he'd spent 8 months bringing to life, watching medical staff conduct their final equipment tests before the official opening ceremony scheduled for the following week. Every monitor, every life support system, every backup power unit hummed with the quiet reliability that represented months of meticulous attention to detail and uncompromising safety standards. Dr. Margaret Chen appeared beside him, her expression carrying the satisfaction of someone whose vision had been translated into reality through the collaboration of skilled professionals who understood that perfection wasn't optional when lives hung in the balance. The cardiac surgery wing represented the culmination of Marcus's transformation from unemployed construction worker to respected project manager. But more importantly, it stood as proof that second chances could create ripple effects extending far beyond individual redemption. "Mr. Rodriguez, I wanted you to see this before anyone else," Dr. Chen said, leading Marcus into the primary cardiac surgery suite where the most complex life-saving procedures would be performed. The room gleamed with the sterile beauty of advanced medical technology. Every surface designed for functionality and safety, every system engineered to operate flawlessly when patients arrived at the edge between life and death. The electrical installations that had caused so much concern during the early months of construction now provided seamless power to equipment capable of restarting hearts, regulating breathing, and monitoring vital signs with precision that bordered on miraculous. Marcus remembered the problematic junction boxes and code violations that had threatened to compromise patient safety, contrasting those early failures with the current perfection that would serve the community for decades to come. Every electrical circuit in this facility has been tested and retested, Dr. Chen continued, her voice carrying the reverence appropriate for discussing systems that would sustain life during humanity's most vulnerable moments. The redundant backup systems your team recommended have exceeded every performance standard we established. When the first patient arrives for emergency cardiac surgery, we'll have confidence that technology won't fail them. Marcus felt the profound weight of responsibility and accomplishment settling into his chest like a warm stone. The past 8 months had challenged every aspect of his professional capabilities, from technical problem-solving to contractor management to crisis leadership. But they had also demonstrated that his years of construction experience had prepared him for responsibilities that extended far beyond building structures to protecting the lives those structures would serve. Tommy Morrison entered the surgery suite carrying a tablet computer loaded with data from the safety monitoring systems he'd installed throughout the construction project. His research had transformed from theoretical innovation to practical application, generating insights that would influence medical facility construction standards across the industry. The collaboration between Tommy's engineering expertise and Marcus's project management experience had created something neither could have achieved independently. Marcus, the data from our pilot program is remarkable, Tommy said, his enthusiasm evident in both his voice and the rapid way he navigated through screens of technical readouts. The predictive safety algorithms caught 14 potential problems before they became actual hazards, including 3 situations that could have resulted in serious injuries or equipment damage. The safety monitoring systems had evolved throughout the construction process, becoming more sophisticated as Tommy's team refined their algorithms based on real-world conditions and Marcus's feedback about practical implementation challenges. What had begun as an experimental collaboration had developed into a comprehensive safety framework that was already attracting attention from construction companies and healthcare systems across the region. The hospital administration wants to discuss implementing similar systems for their next expansion project, Dr. Chen added. They're convinced that the investment in advanced safety monitoring more than pays for itself in reduced accidents, fewer delays, and higher quality installations. Marcus reviewed the tablet data with the practiced eye of someone who'd learned to translate technical specifications into practical implications for worker safety and project success. The numbers told a story of prevention rather than reaction, of problems identified and resolved before they could impact either construction workers or future patients. The collaboration with Tommy had created something valuable that extended beyond the immediate project to influence industry standards and practices. Sophia appeared in the doorway of the surgery suite, wearing the visitor's badge that allowed her access to the construction areas during the final inspection phase. At 12 years old, she carried herself with the confidence of someone whose father's work was making a tangible difference in other people's lives, and her interest in the technical aspects of the project had impressed even the most experienced medical professionals. "Dad, Mrs. Walsh from Advanced Medical Systems wants to show you something in the recovery unit," Sophia said, her voice carrying the pride that had become a constant presence since Marcus's career transformation. She says it's the most sophisticated patient monitoring network she's ever installed. The recovery unit represented the culmination of months of coordination between medical professionals, engineering specialists, and construction experts who understood that every detail mattered. When patients' lives depended on the reliability of complex systems, advanced medical systems had exceeded every specification in their contract, delivering installations that would serve as industry benchmarks for years to come. Susan Walsh met them in the central nursing station, surrounded by monitoring equipment that provided real-time data about patient conditions, environmental systems, and emergency backup procedures. Her team had integrated the electrical installations with Tommy's safety monitoring systems, creating a comprehensive network that could predict and prevent problems before they affected patient care. Mr. Rodriguez, I wanted to personally thank you for your partnership throughout this project, Susan said, her professional demeanor softened by genuine appreciation for the collaborative relationship they'd developed. Your attention to detail and insistence on safety standards challenged us to perform at our highest level. This installation will serve as a reference project for our company's future medical facility work. The praise carried special significance because it came from someone whose expertise Marcus respected and whose standards matched his own commitment to excellence. Advanced medical systems had proven that quality construction required not just technical competence, but also the kind of professional integrity that prioritized long-term performance over short-term convenience. Marcus walked through the recovery unit with Sophia at his side, pointing out features that might not be obvious to casual observers, but represented critical safety considerations for patients whose conditions required constant monitoring and immediate response to changing circumstances. The redundant power systems, the emergency communication networks, the environmental controls that maintained precise temperature and humidity levels all contributed to an environment where healing could occur without the additional stress of technological uncertainties. Dad, when you were building this, did you think about the people who would be patients here? Sophia asked, her question reflecting the thoughtful consideration she brought to discussions about her father's work. Every day, Mija, especially when we were making decisions about safety systems and backup procedures. I kept thinking about families who would bring someone they love here during the scariest time of their lives, and I wanted them to know that every possible precaution had been taken to protect their person. The conversation reminded Marcus of his own experience in hospital waiting rooms during Carmen's final weeks, when medical technology had represented both hope and heartbreak as doctors exhausted every possible treatment option. The memory of those helpless hours had influenced every decision he'd made about the cardiac surgery wing, ensuring that future families would benefit from the most reliable and sophisticated medical support systems available. Robert Morrison's voice echoed through the recovery unit as he conducted a final walkthrough with the hospital's board of directors, his tone carrying the satisfaction of someone whose investment in both advanced technology and capable people had produced results that exceeded expectations. His decision to offer Marcus a position based on character rather than credentials had been validated by 8 months of exemplary performance under challenging circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, this facility represents the future of cardiac and care in our region, Robert Morrison announced to the group of hospital administrators and board members who would oversee the facility's operations. The construction team's attention to detail and commitment to safety standards has created an environment where our medical professionals can focus entirely on patient care, confident that every system will perform flawlessly when lives depend on it. The tour concluded in the main lobby, where a bronze plaque would be installed to commemorate the facility's opening and acknowledge the contributions of everyone who had participated in its construction. Marcus felt a profound sense of completion as he read the preliminary text that would honor the collaboration between Pinnacle Industries, the construction teams, and the medical professionals who had transformed architectural drawings into a place where miracles could happen. Patricia Hernandez joined the group, carrying a folder containing the final project reports that documented every aspect of the construction process, from initial planning through final inspections. Her mentorship had been instrumental in Marcus's successful transition from construction worker to project manager, providing guidance that extended beyond technical procedures to encompass the professional relationships and strategic thinking required for senior management responsibilities. "Marcus, I have the final numbers from the project accounting department," Patricia said, her smile indicating that the news was positive. The cardiac surgery wing was completed 2 weeks ahead of schedule and 8% under budget, while exceeding every safety and quality standard in the original specifications. The financial performance represented validation of Marcus's project management approach, which had prioritized long-term value over short-term cost savings. The decision to replace Apex electrical systems with advanced medical systems had initially increased expenses, but the superior quality of installations and accelerated completion timeline had ultimately saved money while ensuring patient safety. Dr. Chen stepped forward to address the assembled group, her words carrying the authority of someone who would be responsible for the facility's medical operations and patient outcomes. "I want to specifically recognize Mr. Rodriguez's leadership during the electrical contractor crisis that threatened to compromise both our timeline and our safety standards. His decisive action and unwavering commitment to excellence turned a potential disaster into an opportunity to exceed our original goals." The recognition felt both gratifying and humbling, acknowledging Marcus's professional growth while reminding him of the responsibilities that came with positions of leadership. The past 8 months had tested every aspect of his capabilities, from technical problem-solving to crisis management to the delicate balance between firm decision-making and collaborative relationship building. Tommy Morrison approached Marcus as the formal presentations concluded, carrying a manila envelope that contained documents Marcus hadn't expected to see. "Marcus, my grandfather asked me to give this to you. It's a proposal for your next challenge, if you're interested in taking on something even more ambitious." The envelope contained preliminary plans for a pediatric trauma center that would serve children throughout the Midwest, incorporating the most advanced medical technology and safety systems available anywhere in the world. The project represented a natural evolution of Marcus's work at Riverside Regional Hospital, scaling up both the complexity and the potential impact of construction that could save young lives. "The board of directors has been following your work on this project," Tommy explained, his excitement evident as he described the scope and significance of the proposed facility. "They want you to serve as the senior project manager for the entire pediatric center, with authority to select contractors and implement safety protocols based on what we've learned here." Marcus studied the architectural renderings with the analytical eye he'd developed over months of translating medical requirements into construction specifications. The pediatric trauma center would require even more sophisticated systems than the cardiac surgery wing, with specialized environments for treating children whose injuries demanded the most advanced medical interventions available. Sophia peered over his shoulder at the plans, her interest in the technical details reflecting both inherited curiosity and genuine concern for the children who would benefit from the facility. "Dad, this would help kids who got hurt really bad, right? Like if they were in car accidents or fell from high places." "That's exactly right, Mika. This would be a place where doctors could save children's lives when regular hospitals don't have the special equipment and expertise required for the most serious injuries. The personal significance of the project wasn't lost on Marcus, who remembered his own fears about Sophia's safety during the years when single parenthood had meant constant awareness of all the ways children could be hurt by an unpredictable world. The opportunity to contribute to a facility that could protect other people's children felt like a profound alignment of professional capabilities with personal values. Robert Morrison joined their discussion, his expression carrying the weight of decisions that would affect thousands of families over the coming decades. Marcus, this project would establish you as one of the leading experts in medical facility construction, with opportunities to influence safety standards and construction practices throughout the industry. But more importantly, it would create a facility that could save children's lives when every minute counts. The career implications were significant, representing advancement to senior management responsibilities that would establish Marcus as a recognized leader in specialized construction. But the human implications were even more compelling, offering the chance to create something that could prevent other families from experiencing the kind of loss that had devastated his own life. "I'm honored by the opportunity," Marcus said, his voice carrying both gratitude and determination. "When would the project begin?" "Preliminary planning starts immediately, with construction beginning in 6 months," Robert Morrison replied. "The board has allocated a budget that will allow you to implement every safety innovation and quality standard you consider necessary. They've seen what you can accomplish when given the resources and authority to do things right." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Jake Morrison, the general contractor whose collaboration had been essential to the cardiac surgery wing's success. His reputation for quality work and ethical business practices had made him Marcus's preferred partner for complex medical facility construction, and his interest in the Pediatric Trauma Center project would ensure continuity of the professional relationships that had proven so effective. "Marcus, I understand congratulations are in order for both the project completion and your promotion," Jake said, shaking hands with the firm grip that had become familiar over months of working together. "I also understand there might be opportunities for future collaboration on even more challenging projects. The prospect of continuing to work with proven partners while taking on increased responsibilities felt like the natural progression of Marcus's professional development. The relationships he'd built during the cardiac surgery wing construction had demonstrated the value of long-term collaboration between organizations that shared common values and complementary expertise. Advanced Medical Systems had also expressed interest in the Pediatric Trauma Center project, with Susan Walsh proposing electrical installations that would incorporate the latest developments in medical equipment integration and emergency backup systems. The success of their partnership at Riverside Regional Hospital had established them as Marcus's preferred electrical contractor for future medical facility work. As the afternoon sun began to cast longer shadows through the hospital corridors, Marcus found himself reflecting on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought him from unemployment to senior management of projects that could save lives. The wrong interview that had led to the right opportunity, the recognition of past heroism that had created present possibilities, the collaboration with people whose expertise complemented his own experience, all had contributed to a transformation that extended far beyond personal career advancement. Sophia tugged at his sleeve, drawing his attention back to the immediate moment and the celebration that surrounded them. "Dad, Mrs. Morrison wants to talk to you about something special." Sarah Morrison approached, carrying a gift wrapped in elegant paper. her smile carrying the warmth that had characterized every interaction since that first dinner when Marcus had been welcomed into their family's circle of friendship and professional collaboration. "Marcus, this is from our entire family, but especially from Tommy. He insisted on selecting it personally." The gift was a leather-bound photo album containing pictures from every phase of the cardiac surgery wing construction, from groundbreaking ceremony through final inspections. Each photograph was accompanied by detailed captions describing the technical challenges overcome and the safety innovations implemented, creating a permanent record of achievements that had exceeded everyone's expectations. The final page contained a photograph of Marcus and Sophia standing together in the completed surgery suite, surrounded by the monitoring equipment and backup systems that would protect future patients. Below the picture, Tommy had written a note in careful handwriting: "To the man who saved my life and taught me that heroism exists in everyday moments when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things. This facility will save thousands of lives because you refused to accept anything less than perfection." Marcus felt tears gathering in his eyes as he read Tommy's words, understanding that the young man who'd survived cancer and grown into an accomplished engineer had found his own way to honor the moment that had changed both their lives. The photograph would serve as a permanent reminder not just of professional success, but of the human connections that had made that success meaningful. Robert Morrison stepped forward to address the assembled group one final time, his words carrying the weight of decisions that had proven transformative for everyone involved. 8 months ago, I offered Marcus Rodriguez a position based on a single moment of courage that saved my grandson's life. Today, we celebrate not just the completion of a world-class medical facility, but the validation of the principle that character matters more than credentials when it comes to leadership. The speech concluded with announcements about the official opening ceremony scheduled for the following week, when the cardiac surgery wing would begin accepting patients and the life-saving work for which it was designed could finally begin. Marcus would be recognized as the project manager whose attention to detail and commitment to safety had ensured that every system would perform flawlessly when lives depended on it. As the celebration wound down and people began to leave for their respective homes and offices, Marcus found himself alone with Sophia in the main corridor of the facility they had watched rise from architectural plans to operational reality. The silence was comfortable rather than empty, filled with the quiet hum of systems ready to serve patients whose lives would depend on the reliability of every component. "Dad, are you proud of what you built here?" Sophia asked her question, reflecting the thoughtful consideration she brought to discussions about her father's work and its significance. "I'm proud of what we all built together, Mika. This wasn't something any one person could have accomplished alone. It took doctors and engineers and contractors and safety specialists and administrative support staff all working toward the same goal of protecting people's lives." Sophia nodded with the understanding that had developed over months of watching her father navigate complex professional relationships while maintaining his commitment to both excellence and integrity. "But you were the one who made sure everyone did their best work, right?" "I tried to create an environment where everyone could do their best work, where safety was more important than speed and quality was more important than cost. Sometimes that meant making difficult decisions, but it was always worth it when the alternative was risking someone's life." The conversation reminded Marcus of similar discussions with Carmen during his early years in construction, when she'd helped him understand that his work had meaning beyond paychecks and career advancement. Carmen would be proud not just of his professional success, but of the way he'd used that success to contribute to something larger than individual achievement. The drive home took them through neighborhoods that had become familiar during the Months of commuting to the construction site, past schools and parks and community centers that served families whose lives might someday depend on the medical facility Marcus had helped create. The connection between his work and the broader community had become increasingly clear as the project progressed, reinforcing his commitment to standards that prioritized long-term value over short-term convenience. Their small apartment felt different now, not because of any physical changes, but because of the transformation in their circumstances and prospects. The overdue bills that had once covered their kitchen table had been replaced by college savings account statements and vacation planning brochures, evidence of financial security that allowed them to think beyond immediate survival to long-term dreams and goals. Sophia spread her homework across the table, where Marcus had once circled job listings in newspapers, her textbooks and assignments reflecting the academic opportunities that were now available, because her father's career provided both financial stability and flexible scheduling that allowed him to support her education. The contrast served as a daily reminder of how dramatically their lives had changed. "Dad," Tommy called while you were talking to Dr. Chen. Sophia said, looking up from her science homework. "He wants to know if we'd like to come to his apartment tomorrow night. He's cooking dinner for his girlfriend and he wants us to meet her." The invitation reflected the genuine friendship that had developed between Marcus and Tommy, extending beyond their professional collaboration to include family gatherings and personal celebrations. The relationship had enriched both their lives, providing Marcus with a connection to someone who understood the significance of second chances, while giving Tommy a mentor whose practical experience complemented his theoretical knowledge. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message from Patricia Hernandez, containing preliminary budget numbers for the Pediatric Trauma Center project that confirmed the board's commitment to providing whatever resources were necessary to ensure success. The figures represented both opportunity and responsibility, authority to implement every safety innovation and quality standard he considered essential for protecting young patients' lives. The evening passed quietly, with Sophia completing her homework, while Marcus reviewed initial planning documents for the Pediatric Trauma Center. The complexity of the project was both exciting and daunting, requiring coordination between multiple medical specialties, integration of cutting-edge technology, and implementation of safety protocols that would set new industry standards. As Sophia prepared for bed, she paused in the doorway of Marcus's small home office, where project plans and technical specifications covered every available surface. "Dad, when the new hospital for kids is finished, will other children be as safe as Tommy was when you saved him?" The question captured the essential significance of Marcus's work, connecting past heroism with future protection in ways that transcended professional achievement to touch on fundamental questions of human responsibility and care. That's the goal measure. We want to create a place where children can receive the best possible medical care when they need it most. Sophia nodded with satisfaction, as if her father's answer had confirmed something important about the nature of his work and its value to the broader community. "I think Mum would like that you're helping to save kids' lives now, instead of just building regular buildings." The observation reminded Marcus of Carmen's belief that the best work was work that served others, that contributed to something larger than individual advancement or financial gain. The Pediatric Trauma Center represented the fulfillment of values Carmen had embodied throughout her life, using professional capabilities in service of protecting the most vulnerable members of society. That night, as Marcus lay in bed reviewing the events of a day that had marked both completion and new beginning, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him from desperation to fulfillment. The wrong interview that had led to the right opportunity the recognition of past courage that had created present possibilities, the collaboration with exceptional people who had challenged him to exceed his own expectations, all had contributed to a transformation that felt both miraculous and inevitable. The cardiac surgery wing would open the following week, ready to serve patients whose lives would depend on the reliability of every system Marcus had overseen during 8 months of meticulous construction. The Pediatric Trauma Center would begin construction in 6 months, representing the next phase of his evolution from project manager to industry leader. Both facilities would serve communities for decades to come, protecting lives and supporting families during their most vulnerable moments. Sophia's breathing had settled into the steady rhythm of peaceful sleep, the sound of someone whose dreams were no longer constrained by financial anxiety or uncertainty about the future. Marcus listened to that gentle rhythm, remembering nights when her sleep had been fitful with worry about bills and housing and whether her father would find steady work. The contrast served as a measure of how completely their circumstances had changed. Outside their apartment window, the lights of Chicago stretched toward the horizon like stars fallen to earth, each one representing families and dreams and struggles, similar to those Marcus and Sophia had experienced during their darkest months. Somewhere in that vast city, other parents were wrestling with unemployment and overdue bills. Other children were learning to temper their expectations to match their families' diminished circumstances. Marcus thought about Robert Morrison's belief that the universe had a way of bringing the right people together at the right time, that seemingly random events could create connections that changed multiple lives in profound and lasting ways. The wrong floor of the right building, the mistaken interview that had revealed past heroism, the collaboration with people whose expertise had complemented his own experience, all had contributed to opportunities that extended far beyond personal advancement. The final text message of the day came from Tommy Morrison, containing a photograph of the bronze plaque that would be installed in the cardiac surgery wing lobby. The inscription read, "Dedicated to all who believe that excellence in construction serves the cause of healing, and that attention to detail can mean the difference between life and death." Completed through the collaboration of professionals who understood that some work is too important for anything less than perfection. Marcus saved the photograph to his phone, knowing that Sophia would want to see it in the morning and that the words would serve as a permanent reminder of the principles that had guided their work throughout the project. Excellence, collaboration, attention to detail, and the understanding that some work carried responsibilities that transcended normal business considerations all had contributed to success that could be measured not just in budget performance and timeline completion, but in lives that would be saved by reliable medical technology. As sleep finally came, Marcus felt the profound satisfaction of someone whose work had meaning beyond personal advancement, whose professional capabilities were being used to protect and serve others in ways that honored both his own values and the memory of those who had shaped his character. The Pediatric Trauma Center would present new challenges and opportunities, but it would also represent the continuation of work that had transformed both his career and his understanding of what it meant to build something that truly mattered. The last conscious thought of the evening was a silent promise to Carmen, whose belief in serving others had influenced every decision Marcus had made throughout the cardiac surgery wing project. The Pediatric Trauma Center would be built with the same commitment to excellence and safety that had characterized his first major project, ensuring that other families would benefit from medical facilities designed and constructed by people who understood that some work was too important for anything less than perfection. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.